had our full roster 8.5% of the games that we played. And it's very rare that you have players playing more minutes together in the playoffs than they have the entire regular season. And Donnie Strack and Andrew Paul specifically have really just shown great skill in managing us through the year and getting ourselves to a point where we had great availability at the end of the year and into the postseason. So that was a remarkable effort by those guys and their teams. I think teams can be attached or they can be connected. And this team was absolutely connected. The way it's connected is through the trust that the guys have developed. And in some case over years, in some case relatively quickly with some new additions. But you can't confuse outcomes with trust. If we didn't win the last game, it wouldn't change all the dynamics and the qualities that I've named off about the team. And I think sometimes that gets lost when you have success. It seems to shift to, the reason why is these things. But a lot of times it's a lot of different things that are out of your control that allow that to happen. Somewhere along the way, this group of guys was having tremendous inputs about the value of winning, being a part of winning, and not taking yourself too seriously or keeping score on the other people in your life that are supposed to be helping you. Instead, I think they reverse a lot of that and they think about how am I helping the other person? And that comes from a great collection of people. So when we were able to win the final game, it wasn't just our players and staff, but it was really their families, because their families have really helped guide them and put them in a mindset that helped all of us achieve the goal that we were able to. The last thing I would say is, and I heard this the other day, is experiencing things properly allows you to remember them vividly. And this last season should live in our hearts and minds and animate our outlook on much more than basketball in Oklahoma. The players from this team, they will be immortalized, not because they delivered a trophy to Oklahoma, but because they did so in a fashion that everyone in this state can easily relate to and understand, and that's their greatest legacy. And he played the 2 months with this injury. It's just a ligament tear. It's not a injury that he'll have any problem recovering from. It's pretty common. But the part that I'm most impressed with is in our modern era, when someone has a poor performance or they're not playing to their capability in a game and there's a lot of attention on it, you often see little birdie make sure that everybody knows that the player is not 100%. Never happened with this guy. Not one time. He powered through. He showed incredible mental endurance and security in himself. And I've said this many times, the best players are secure players. And I really thought it was pretty impressive that he just kept moving along with no excuses. And obviously played his best basketball, down the stretch of the season. But he'll be undergoing surgery, and he should be available for the start of the regular season. I just think we've kind of from day one just focused on a set of principles that we felt could be consistently applied, that are pulled from this particular community, and tried to not deviate from those. And then whatever effect that has or however people interpret that, that's really up to them.
You mentioned homegrown, stuck to that plan. You did it very differently than anybody's ever done it. How much pride do you take in the fact that you did it your way, very different than others?
I don't know if pride is the right word, because it's like, to me, that's a little judgmental of the other ways that you can do it. To me, there's kind of three ways in the league. You can assemble teams, you can inherit and modify a team, or you can build a team. So I think there's three kind of modes, build, modify, assemble. How you do that, or the way in which you do that, I think is very contextual. For us, building is probably our best path here. And so because of that, we don't have a lot of time to determine, well, which way should we go? So the paradox of choice is not really in our vantage point. So I think that helps us. We kind of know what our circle of competence is, and we try to really lean into that. But I think the way the guys have expressed that kind of in their play, the philosophies of the organization, and that's been really a special thing. And Mark being able to bring that to the court itself, was really unique, and that's one of the reasons why I love working with him. If we boiled everything down and burned the boats for one season, and that season was last year, we wouldn't be in this position. And I feel like we're going to be in a position for the team to continue to grow and get better, for a period of years because of the age of the team. I also think the team will be different next year. Even if we return the exact roster that we have today, because the players will improve, teams will play us differently, and there's just a natural, organic nature to a team's development. And so we're not looking to try to replicate what we did last year. We're not trying to hold on too tightly to one way to win, and I think you saw that coming into this year, because the year previous, I think we won 58 games with Chet at the 5. And prior to that, people thought we were crazy to have him to play him at the 5. We won 58 games. But then when we came back this year, we added heart. And so we're not married to one way of doing anything. We're looking to try to figure out what's the best way for a given team. And I'd like to think that you're going to see us continually strive for that, and it should look different. I was just so happy for the players because they really try to do everything right. They prioritize winning, not just this year, but early on. And they are extremely ambitious, but they never had an agenda that pulled away from the collective team. And they went through a fair amount of adversity during the season. In reality, a lot of that adversity forged us into the team that we were, playing different lineups and being without certain players and then getting those players back, and the selflessness and humility that the players coming back had to have in order to fit into a team that was really cooking without them. Chet is one example of that, but we had many others. So you just want to feel like that is getting rewarded. What if this teacher didn't put their arm on me? Or what if this coach didn't correct me? Or what if this friend didn't, serve as a mentor or a rock? Or, I didn't end up in San Antonio, or I didn't, for me, I have a pretty good understanding of like where I fit in all this. Like, I was a Division III player. I really shouldn't be here. So, every day I'm kind of like, how did this happen? So I think that's a big part of me, is like this inner life experience that I think everyone's going through that. But I asked everyone in the organization before we got on the parade route. I gathered everybody, and I just said, look, have the time of your life today. This is so rare. But after it's over, like, call somebody that had an influence on you, that nudged you, pushed you, held you accountable. We all landed in this place at this time. No one knows exactly why, But it wouldn't be that way if it weren't for somebody or a lot of people in your life that made that possible. And, I just think that level of gratitude and reflection is important. And that's what I mean when we're talking about saying things that are experienced like very, very fondly and presently are become very vivid for you. And I think not just being euphoric, but at some level, looking back and being grateful is really important. It's year 17, but the 16 years leading up to this, I think a lot of people feel a part of it. So from tons of former players, some that were here for a year and some that were here for many, many years, former coaches, people that were sweeping the floors, previously, people that were in the video room. Just so many people. I had one person say, and I thought this was really well said, I'm not going to get a ring, but I'm a part of the banner. And I really, that's what you want people to feel when they are a part of your program. And those people 100% are. I don't feel like his progress is like volatile. I don't know if that makes sense, but like, I don't feel like it's built on things that can't be repeated and built up again. Because I think he's, like I said a couple years ago, he's a secure player. He's a secure person, which means he's a secure player. He can see himself clearly and his limitations. Those don't intimidate him or make him defensive. He sees those clearly, which allows him to work towards those. He also, because he's able to see himself clearly, he's not projecting those things onto his teammates or his opponents. He doesn't just see, he doesn't say, well, this person's not doing this or this person's not as good. I think that's extremely rare. And he's never keeping score on others. He's looking at himself, how he can improve, and how will that help those that he plays with versus how are they supposed to be propping him up. That's why I feel so good about his progress, because I think you can absolutely build on all that. And I've been very consistent for the last 3 years talking about maybe the greatest attribute that we have as a group is the rate of learning. Our rate of learning outpacing our experience level. And that really played out in this particular postseason because we were able to play, be confronted with some limitations, failures, go back and make some corrections. Excuse me. We didn't lose 2 games in a row in the postseason. And so each game we played, we could get better. I think the team will be fundamentally different next season just because of the experience we gained, the improvement that many of these players will undergo, physical, mental, emotional. And then the other thing is us not trying to grip too tightly to the formula we used last year. I don't know where we would be if we were trying to replicate the year before or we're trying to grip too tightly to something that worked previously. I think having a beginner's mindset, staying extremely curious, trying a lot of different things, and being very open to what the team and the signals that the team is sending you is really important to how we can scale from here. I thought that one of the best things we did in the postseason was, when we got the ball really moving, it took the tension out of the game for everybody. And I think that's one of the most limiting things to like the rhythm of your team is reducing tension allows there to be more rhythm in the game. And I thought we did a really good job with that in Game 5 and Game 7. And I think there's an energy to the team when that's happening. And when we capture that, there's like a real cohesion where all the individual strengths are kind of working together and no one's muted, nobody's stunted. And I think it really connects the team. And for us to be able to access that in some of the biggest moments really says a lot about the players. So there's so much more for the team to capture and find. I'm excited to see that, but it may not look the same. We talk all the time about like growing from experiences, and that's a organizational fundamental, but sometimes you can be limited by your experiences too. So you just haven't encountered something. So sometimes it's not that you can't do it, it's just you haven't had exposure or been confronted with something. And I think that was a big story of our team. And you could say for Mark or any of us in that respect is you can grow from experiences, but you can also be limited by the experiences you haven't had yet. And each time our team was exposed to something new, it wasn't seen as a problem or anything. I think the way we tried to reframe it was, this is just the next thing up in our process to become a great team. Losing the first game against Denver, down 0-1. Okay, we could look at that as a disappointment, which obviously it was, but also was now, here's the next thing in front of us as a team that we have to overcome to become a great team. It's not an inconvenience. Basically now it's a necessity. Then we get confronted with a million other things, in the postseason, getting blown out, right? A couple different times, and then having some momentum, and then coming out and not playing well in a game 6, responding to that. These are all things we just had never been confronted with yet. And the fact that I think the team saw those as like, hey, this is just the next thing in front of us that we have to accomplish to achieve the goals of being a great team. And I don't think anyone was inconvenienced or saw that as a catastrophic event. But it's like, well, I guess this is part of the thing we have to get better at. And they met the moment.
A few years ago, you called Katie Russ and Harden basketball warrior, god, genius. Yep. How would you describe Shea?
What I call the other three?
Basketball god, basketball warrior, and basketball genius.
Artist. Basketball artist. Yep, that's what I would say with Shea. No. That's my first reaction to that.
Is there a particular reason why you describe him that way?
I just think he's got left and right brain working. And I think when you think about people that are extremely successful in what they do, they can't operate all on one side or the other. So people have to have, to me, the great people in life, business, sports, any industry, have to be able to have access both sides of a creative side and then also a very objective side. But what makes, to me, the greats of the great are the people that have the emotional intelligence to decide when to call on each one of those. So you can have access to both, but the key is knowing when to pull which club at what time. You just can't use the hammer. If all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail, right? And so in this case, like, you got to know when to use the hammer, and then you got to know when to use the sander, if that's an example. And I think he's got that. When Chet got injured, he and Hart are the ones that helped him off the floor. And in all my years doing this, I've never, ever seen a player in that much pain. I mean, it was really tough. And Hart and Jwill, they stayed with him the whole time in the back. And it was uncomfortable. It was uncomfortable because when someone's in that much pain, it's hard to be a bystander. You know what I mean? And those guys were both injured at the time. It was the greatest act of team support and teammate support I'd ever seen. I don't know that it will ever be matched. They sat with him. They supported him. And Chet, I don't even know if he could realize they were there, because of what he was going through. But those two guys, that's the kind of stuff that makes the team unique. and to understand how difficult that must have been for those guys to see someone in that much pain. And they stayed there the whole time until he left for the hospital. And Chet, we had to stop halfway to locker room. He couldn't make it to locker room. It was that bad. And eventually he got him to the table. But those guys sat there and they never left his side. And I just blown away by that. These are the things that go on inside teams that are unspoken, that, you know, when people are watching, they have these very, very strong opinions. You know, they have 100% confidence with 10% of the information. You know, 90% of the stuff is these types of things. And there's stuff like that happening all the time. And it can show up in different situations. And, you know, I have to think that those small acts of support and selflessness were somewhere inside of the last 2 months.